Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I'll be joined by my co-host, Hall, here very, very soon. But the title of tonight's episode is a sweeping dub after the Commanders went into New York yesterday. And I called it the Battle of the Bastards heading in. And obviously, Jon Snow and company won the battle for this one, which is we're all excited and happy to see, unless you were of the tank crowd, so to speak. But to be able to talk about the game and overall just some developing things that have happened over the days is good friend of this show, Mr. Mitch Tischler. Thank you for joining me on this Victory Monday, Mitch. How are you doing?
Absolutely. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, sir. I have to ask you first and foremost. I know there's people that want to tank, and even Jeremy Reeves on Twitter got on there and said that he's not of that accord. He doesn't care about draft picks, and more credit to him for being honest. But what was your kind of feeling after that game? Was it something that you're looking at saying, well, now they've taken a step back in draft order with the Saints winning, and now we won? What was your feeling after the game?
You'll never find an NFL player that wants to tank. I mean, that's not the way that the league is set up. Particularly this Commanders team is so many players on 1-year deals and short-term deals that these guys need to have good tape out there because they got to go. They got to go play. I understand the fans that want to tank, and there's certainly some merit to it. I think they had to win that football game. I think for the team's mentals, if you will, finishing off a year with 12 straight losses leaves yourself a whole lot of questions as you go into an off season. As much as folks might not be pleased about it, I think they had to go out and win that game, and they did. And I think you could feel the collective exhale after that game. We walked into the locker room and heard one player say, "Man, it's been a long time since we've won." And it's been, 70 days. Like that's a long ass time in the NFL to not win a football game.
You're absolutely right, Mitch. And Hall, I'm going to have you ask two questions back to back after I ask this one. But today, Dan Quinn released that Jaden Daniels will not be playing for the rest of the season. Seems kind of premature for a simple elbow injury, but it's not a surprise to any of us. I'm not going to lie to you, Mitch. It's not something that I understand it, but I don't necessarily like it because Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, others are playing still. Do you find this to be the right move heading into the last 3 games of the season, going against some very good competition, especially defensively?
Well, Dan Quinn said he wasn't going to be cleared to play this weekend medically. So you're talking about maybe 2 weeks left. And
right.
Probably at that point, you're talking about 2 games that neither team cares for a whole lot. So, the Eagles are most likely going to clinch the division this weekend. I think any combination of an Eagles win, Cowboys loss, clinches the division for the Eagles, and would eliminate the Cowboys pretty much from playoff contention. So I do think I was all in on he needs to play. He needed to come back and play. But if they're not going to medically clear him, this week, I don't know, A, that anything's going to change as you go into next week, and B, that there's a whole lot to get out of it into, kind of preseason-ish football games. But big picture, as Dan Quinn talks about the importance of playing in games, I hope that they look at the way that they go about the preseason and the way they go about training camp. And those things are changed as they go into next year, because certainly I think they're playing from behind the 8 ball essentially this whole year. And I think I put a lot of it on the softness, the easiness with which training camp was in preseason for these guys.
Yeah, no, pretty much agree with everything you said. A lot of people that were out there on a day-to-day basis talked about how, let's bring back the old days, how it was kind of like a Club J kind of sense, where it was just like kind of light during the preseason or during training camp. And yeah, definitely, like you said, I agree with Jaden Daniels. Like, I would have preferred him to play, but like you said, with the quick turnaround, with them playing Saturday, then on Christmas, him not being cleared, it's just 2 games left. Like you said, it's kind of like, what is the risk? Like the risk outweigh the reward at that point, I feel like. But going back to Sunday's game, felt good to get a win finally. I know a lot of people wanted the tankathon to keep going, but Ben Sinnott has been a guy that's been He's the new whoever you want to call for the past 25 years, where fans just obsessed over him for however long he's here. Do you think he's a guy that can be a contributor, or are fans just overly obsessing because he's not really getting the looks or the shots or the opportunities that fans want to see him get?
I think he can be a contributor. Do I think he's going to be a starting caliber NFL tight end or a guy who's going to go out and be a big difference maker for you? I have to see it. I have to see a whole lot more before I was willing to go out on a ledge there. I think when you look at this offense, there's not a lot offensively other than getting healthy that I think that they need to do this offseason. I mean, obviously they're going to need a number two receiver. I think they need a speedster receiver, and I think they need a Zach Ertz replacement. And quite frankly, that as much as I think there was hope that Ben Sennett might be able to step in and do that, I think he's a lot closer to who John Bates is than he is Zach Ertz. And that's certainly a useful piece on this team, but I don't know that Sennett's going to go out and be your everyday, 50, 60, 70 catch a season, kind of explosive-ish tight end.
Yeah, I'm starting to trend towards that kind of train of thought. But again, he could come out and have a Luke McCaffrey type of explosion onto the scene next year and kind of carve out a role for himself. So who knows? But kind of looking forward, a guy that stepped in was Chris Paul and kind of played himself into a starter for this offensive line who hopefully will be one of the strengths of this team going into next year. Do you think that he's played himself into a contract here, or do you think that they might rely on Brandon Coleman to kind of maybe get back to the original plan for him, which was the left guard spot?
I think he's certainly played himself into an NFL contract. It'll be interesting to see whether it's here or elsewhere. We were in the press box talking about it a little bit in New York, and I was saying he might be kind of a De'Ami Brown type player this offseason where you really want to bring him back. He's a guy that you like and he's your guy. You want to bring him back. However, if he goes out and someone offers him 10, 11, 12 million dollars a year, which is what kind of starting guards make, that might be a step too far for this team to go, money wise, considering Brandon Coleman stepped in and Brandon Coleman wasn't playing poorly. He just wasn't able to stay on the field healthy enough, which is why they went to Chris Paul. And Chris has been, a surprise and has been really, really good. So he deserves all the money he gets. But if someone's going to offer him, 3 years, 30 mil with, 20 guaranteed or something like that, I don't know that necessarily would make sense for the Commanders to go that way because you're going to spend big money on Laramie Tunsil. You basically have boxed yourself in there where you have to re-sign him. You're going to need probably two more receivers who are going to cost you, 20, $30 million a year. And quite frankly, there's a whole lot of holes on that defense that need to start getting plugged with not just the 1 year cheap type players, but trying to build yourself into a better overall roster and have more kind of high end talent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And honestly, yesterday was probably the best thing possible for this front office, Mitch, in the sense that not just for the win, but for the fact that the young guys seemed to show up yesterday. Jalen Lane had the punt return for a touchdown. That was absolutely beautiful to see. Ben Sinnott came in and did exceptionally well. Mikey Sainristil with a beautiful pick where he read that route. Are you of the like mind that this was actually a really good time for the front office because this was I actually looked at them prior to this week of them saying are we really getting the most out of these players and did they make the right selections and them playing well in that game yesterday? It had to be a confidence building kind of thing for this front office and let alone those players, right?
Yeah, listen, I think it's great anytime you see young guys affect the game in all three phases. You talked about Jalen Lane. He's kind of the only guy that kind of, I think, walks out of that game with kind of pluses across the board with him. Mikey Sanders still certainly had the nice pick. He also got beat on the fourth down touchdown to the corner of the end zone,
Yep.
Pretty handily. Bill had a really nice day, but had the fumble.
Yep.
I think there are a lot of, good, but, also had mistakes. But at the end of the day, that's, what you want to see these last couple of weeks of the season is you want to see these young guys, step up and play well and start making some plays. I don't know what happened with Jordan McGee, why he took a step back in terms of total number of snaps, but I did like early in the game they had Bobby Wagner and a spy on Jackson Dart, and you saw Jackson take advantage of it a couple times. And as the first half kind of progressed, you saw Jordan McGee step in and play that role a little bit more. What I really like that I've seen from him is his ability to make open field tackles. I think there's still a lot of growth that you want to see from Jordan McGee, but he's definitely taken some steps forward, and you see kind of where that athleticism separates him, from some of the elder linebackers that we've seen come through here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Definitely love to see the young guys kind of contribute and I guess not really alleviate the fan base because the fan base is still going to go crazy about guys need to get more playing time, make more plays, but baby steps. We're taking baby steps here. Just kind of looking forward because obviously this season, a couple more games left, but it's pretty much a wash. They're picking number 8 right now, and just not even looking at the board or anything like that. Just if you had a guy like Caleb Downs,
edge rusher.
Okay, there you go. I was going to say.
To me, you need a difference maker on that defensive line. They've tried over the years to do a couple different things. Injuries, kind of hurt their plan on the D line this year. But at the end of the day, assuming Dorrance Armstrong comes back healthy, you need somebody on the other side that can affect a game. And quite frankly, there's nobody on this defense that opposing offensive coordinators have to plan for. Hey, this guy is the guy that can beat us. So that gives teams an opportunity to be extremely multiple when you're not worried about anybody in particular on defense. And a lot of what I think folks were hoping Chase Young would be is what you need on this team. You need somebody who you hope is going to be able to step in and be a difference maker, get after the quarterback, be responsible in the run and be able to make plays. But to me, that the first round, it's impossible to say what's going to happen once we get there. But to me, if there's a reasonable edge rusher, maybe a reasonable, safety type that's there, I think you got to go one of those two ways. But to me, first round has to be on defense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Even though I get told by Twitter that you shouldn't pigeonhole yourself into any situation. But it seems like, to me personally, the offense hasn't been the issue this season. It's been the defense. It's getting bludgeoned every single game. But, we all look at things differently, right, Mitch? And the question that I had...
Just to point out, the defense was atrocious last year.
Yeah,
the offense was so damn good that it kind of got washed under. They were able to make it. They were able to create enough turnovers, but the defense was bad last year. The offense was just elite. So I think all the winning that happened last year, I think, overshadowed a lot of different warts that were on this roster.
Absolutely, you could make the argument. I remember us saying in the offseason, if the run defense can get, I guess, split. We were looking at like middle of the pack. We were like, this is a really good football team that could do something in the playoffs. We didn't realize that it meant that everything was going to fall back from being top 5 in pass defense. That was going to fall to the bottom third of the league as well. And it just seems like a total collapse. I think competition has a lot to do with it. But regardless, to get off base here, I want to kind of talk about the overall feeling of the organization heading into this offseason. Heading into the offseason last year, they were on a high, right? Obviously, coming in to this year, it was stagnant, and then the season just went awry for them. How do you think this front office is going to be able to kind of balance the scales of trying to generate the excitement going into next season, but coming off of a really bad season this season?
I think they have to be aggressive, and I think they have to be willing to spend money. I think everything went 2 off seasons ago. Everything went so perfectly right that the soft training camp and the lack of physicality that we saw. You got to give these guys some leeway. They were just in the NFC Championship game. That's something this franchise hasn't seen in a long time. So it's hard to you can mention these things happening as they go, but you don't know what the effect's going to be until you get into the season. And to me, I think they went kind of cheap last offseason. I think they were able to plug a lot of holes with 1 year, short, low dollar, kind of vet type guys who could step in and help you out. They tried to recreate it, and it didn't work. And I think, what we're seeing is the roster is, maybe a little bit deeper than when these guys took over, but not not a whole heck of a lot, not certainly as much as everyone would have hoped that they would be, considering, that you finally had a legitimate, NFL setup with a, with a GM and a front office and, kind of the right hierarchy there. I think they need to be more aggressive. I think you need, more kind of standout stud star players, and it's not necessarily that you don't need those filler guys, because the way the roster is built, they need a lot of filler guys, but they need some high end talent. They need to bring in some high end talent. They need to be willing to spend a couple bucks.
With that being said, Mitch, in needing to be aggressive, would you be willing to bring in Brandon Ayuk?
No. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be so quick to say no. Depends what kind of money Ayuk is asking for. But we just went through a full season of everyone getting hurt. You can't dole out big dollars for somebody that hasn't proven an ability to stay on the football field. And Ayuk is a good player, and obviously the relationship with Jaden, I think there's certainly a lot of positives that you could take away from that, but that also has the opportunity to go the other direction, as well, if you have, those two guys who are quote unquote too tight, if you will. But it's something that I want this team to explore and look at and enter with an open mind. But I also don't think, if Ayuk wants the contract that he had in San Francisco to be re-upped by another team, I don't think you can afford to give that much money to a guy who was unable to stay healthy.
Ah, Mitch, you're the man, bro. You're absolutely the man. But to wrap this up, I only have a couple more questions for you, Mitch. In terms of defensive coordinator, it's up in the air. Dan Quinn didn't rule it out that he would return as the play caller next season. Joe Witt obviously is still on the staff, and it's a big question to ask. Is Joe Witt going to be retained in a smaller, lesser of a responsibility type of role, maybe where his forte is in the secondary? Or are they going to is Dan Quinn going to stay there, or are they going to go outside of the organization to try to find a defensive coordinator to come in, or are they going to promote from within? Mitch Tischler, in your opinion, what would you be doing with the defense heading into next season?
I think they're going to bring in a defensive coordinator. Um, Whether Joe Witt stays on the roster or the coaching staff or not, is I think fans want their pound of flesh and they want him fired. I do think that his fire and passion can have a good impact on a defense, on a team. I don't know that he needs to be the guy calling the plays. So
Very fair.
if he stays on, I think I'm okay with it. But I think they need to bring in a defensive coordinator, and there are going to be a lot of names that are thrown around out there. Who knows how high they're going to shoot when it comes to D coordinator. But I do think they're going to bring somebody in, and I would love to see them bring in Brian Flores is a free agent at the end of the season, or doesn't have a contract for next season.
I don't think they're going to let him go, Mitch.
Right. I don't think they're. That's our. I don't think they're going to let
My
him
bad.
go, but I want them to bring in somebody with his style of aggressiveness.
Okay.
The
Thank you.
defense, I think, this year was far too passive, and I think the defensive plan, which ultimately Joe Witt bears for, but I think the plan on defense was to play this kind of bend don't break style,
Yes.
because the expectation was the offense was going to be good. I've been saying all year long, I think this front office, this coaching staff came in hoping for the best, but never planned for the worst. And I want to see them be more aggressive overall, and that includes in free agency, that includes with style of play, both offensively and defensively. And so, there are a bunch of really good defensive minds out there. I don't want to go into a season with an expectation that because Jaden Daniels is Jaden Daniels, the offense is going to be top 5, and thus we just need an okay defense to get by. They need to plan for, in case, worst case scenario, you need to go out there and play, reasonable, good defensive football. They can keep you in football games and go win.
And that's a big shot to the a good defense is a really good offense crowd that are taking that one to heart. Sorry, Hall.
Now, as we're talking about the new D coordinator, this has been kind of like what I've been thinking about stewing on since Joe Witt was relieved of his duties. But we've kind of got a track record now of Dan Quinn's defense just kind of getting whooped up by the McVay, that Shanahan, LaFleur kind of offenses, which a lot of the league is running those type of offenses nowadays. Do you think that when they do go and get a new defensive coordinator, they need to, I'm not going to say like completely go away from Dan Quinn's scheme, but kind of retool it? Or do you think they just need to kind of it's more of a players thing, and the scheme is fine.
No, they need to retool the scheme. I don't think the scheme is good enough. And honestly, you can, if you go back to like his days in Dallas, they had Micah Parsons, and then you had DBs that were great at going and getting the football. And when we were talking about the draft and going to get somebody that's going to affect a game, they want every team wants a Micah Parsons, but they want a player that isn't that can do a lot of different things and get after the quarterback and force teams to affect it. At the moment, there was the edge angst going into the season about the lack of pass rush, but again, I think so much of this season was predicated on the plan that the offense was going to be great. And I think I don't have any doubts that Jaden can still be great, but you have to plan in case the offense isn't. And there was no adjustment there when the offense was middle of the road, or worse than middle of the road, but middle of the road, because the defense was just so bad. So I think they need to. I think free agency. You need to go out and attack particular players that you think are gonna help, and then I want them to go be more aggressive, blitz more, be multiple in different ways. Have more, have more dummy plays on defense to get opposing quarterbacks thinking. My biggest thing when they've played multiple times this year, they've played quarterbacks who have come in that have been struggling beyond belief, and they don't do anything early in the game to threaten those guys. Early in the game, they don't get after the quarter. They're not sending blitzes. They're not putting anything in the back of that guy's mind to think about, this may be coming, and speed up their internal clocks. And so, part of that's on the players that are there. Part of it's on the coaching staff and the scheme. But I think all of it, we see needs to change and needs to be improved.
Now, please excuse me. I'm going Super Saiyan right now because Mitch is speaking exactly to what I have been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm just so glad that Mitch is in here to be able to resolve my thinking there. But with the running back,
that supports what Hall's been. Hall, what have you been yelling about? Can I be on the same page as you for something?
You can want
We're
Brandon
pretty much
Ayuk.
on the same page with everything. I do think that I'm with you. I think that it's not really a players thing, where I think they do need like a Michael Parson-esque type of game wrecker guy on the defense that can speed the quarterback up, get him off his spot, and they do need a cornerback or two, like a Deron Bland or a Trayvon Diggs, that's a ball hawk kind of guy that can create turnovers. Because even like you go back to Dan Quinn in Dallas, like their defenses gave up a lot of yards. It was just they were playing with the lead because they had a really good offense, and they had Michael Parsons to kind of make up for, okay, if we're going to get beat deep, we're going to get beat deep. But we also have Michael Parsons to speed the quarterback up, and we have cornerbacks and secondary guys that are really good man guys, but also willing to take risks. So I think that I do think it's a scheme thing, but I also do think obviously they need to upgrade the players, but I think they need to tweak the scheme as well. So we can agree on that.
Right, and if you
We
can't,
can go to war for that one.
and the
All
point
right,
that
good.
the point that we've been making, and I've been making for a while, is teams are knowing exactly what you're in. Every single time they know where to go with the football. It's an easy decision. It's crisp. The transition is just smooth for them for hitting your weak points. You have to at least confuse them a little bit. And I loved what Brian Flores did against our offensive line. If you go back and look at it, he's got multiple guys standing up. They're not always rushing, but it just confuses the offensive line enough to be able to get somebody in a one-on-one matchup. We should have been doing that for a while. If you can't depend on your defensive ends to win every single time, at least try to get those confusing matchups happening just to make them think a little bit more. Because like it's well known that the Shanahan tree does a fantastic job against Dan Quinn's offense. If you knowing that going into that game, you should throw them a curveball and do something differently to create some confusion. And so it's just Mitch, you're speaking to my soul when talking about being more aggressive, sending more. Frankie Louisville obviously is fantastic as an edge rusher. His pass defense and run defense hasn't been exceptional this season as much as every announcer wants to tell us that Frankie Louisville is the best defender on the field. I get it. I'm just saying there's a long way to go. But I want to ask you about the running back room because Austin Eckler obviously is on IR for the whole season. His contract is up. Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, their contracts are up. Bill is basically the only one on the roster for multiple years. Would you be bringing any of those guys back, or would you be much more interested in the free agency draft kind of mindset in this offseason?
I think you need to bring back a Chris Rodriguez-esque player. If it is it specifically Chris, I think the money will dictate that. I think you need a. I didn't like them getting rid of Brian Robinson in the beginning of the year because he was the only running back with a track record of, you know, as an every down back, and then also for the most part relatively staying healthy for the majority of the season. And I thought coming in, you were putting a lot of pressure on a lot of guys who hadn't toted the rock a whole lot. So I do think that they're going to bring in a real third down type back, like a Jeremy McNichols, a dude who's a dog in pass pro, and also has a little bit of shiftiness and can do some stuff. I mean, McNichols has been very good this season.
Yeah, yeah.
He fumbled on Sunday, but he's been, he doesn't get a ton of opportunities, but he seems to convert big third downs over and over and over again. And he has a nose for the ball, and that a nose for the first down line. In that sense, he's also very good in pass pro. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did ultimately bring him back. Chris Rodriguez, I think, is an interesting one. It's going to depend, I think, on what the money looks like there. But they also brought in the kid from Michigan,
Donovan Edwards.
Donovan Edwards, who I think they have some level of hope for. But again, he would be my fourth running back on the roster if they go that way. But I think Bill still has the same upside that he had before the season in terms of long-term growth with this team. Did a little more get on his plate than maybe he was ready for early this year. I think we can probably agree. He had a big game. It was at the Chargers game. I think he went for 100, and then kind of disappeared a little bit in the middle. I think you got to find somebody who's a little more demonstrative between the tackles. He does a good job when there are holes, finding them and hitting them, like the touchdown we saw Sunday against the Giants. He's, I think, yet to find his groove. What Brian Robinson was very good at, falling forward for 2 yards and getting yourself to 2nd and 8 instead of 1st and 11. So that's something that he'll continue to grow and get better with. But I think you need a downhill running back with a little bit of beef, and then also a more scat back type guy, and then continue to work with Bill on both the stuff in the run game, but also getting him more comfortable in the pass game, because he has that athleticism with the ball in his hands. If you're able to get it to him on the outside, and he can get a little more consistent there to really make some plays in the screen games and flats and stuff like that.
Just had a random question or thought pop up. More than likely, I think we all think that Cliff's going to be back in 2026. But for the off chance that he does happen to take a head coaching gig somewhere, there's been a lot of talk about when Dan Quinn was in Atlanta, where when Kyle Shanahan left, he should have promoted within, except he went outside and all that. Do you think? Well, I think a lot of people think he'll promote within. Who do you think would be that guy on this staff right now that if Cliff were to leave, that would be able to step in and be the offensive coordinator?
I'll start off with, I'm not so sure Cliff's going to be here next year. I don't know where he's going to go necessarily, but I'm not as sure as I was earlier in the year. His agent and his people will do a good job of, they've kept this offense reasonable this season with all the injuries. Despite the raw numbers dropping year over year, I think you can look at, how many offensive coordinators would have fallen flat having to, play the snap game that they had to play at quarterback, all the injuries they had on the outside, all those different things. Yeah, Michael Scott. So I think Cliff may go out and find himself a job out there. And if he does, barring a big name becoming available and taking over, I do think there are some really good internal candidates. The two, I think, more obvious ones are Anthony Lynn, who's been a head coach before, running backs coach now, run game coordinator, and Brian Johnson, who's offensive pass game coordinator. He was obviously an OC in Philly when things went real south there, so things didn't go well for him, but he has experience in the role. And then I think the deeper dive would be a guy like David Rye. And I think ultimately the way that this season went, promoting Rye that far up in a year that is going to, ultimately be a real, flashpoint of a season with Jaden and how he does and what he does might be a lot for a young guy who's never done it before to have that kind of pressure and that kind of expectation on him. So, um, I, if you're asking me today, I would say Brian Johnson, probably is my gets the biggest slice of the pie, and then probably David Ryan and Lynn are split, right there at number two, and then bringing in somebody from the outside would be kind of my third option. But all that being said, if Mike McDaniel ends up getting let go in Miami or something along those lines becomes available for this team, I would like to see them get aggressive and go after a guy like that. But if a proven bigger name is not available, then there are plenty of good options in house.
My man. Last couple of questions I have for you before I let you get out of here and get to sleep, Mitch. Debo
It's
Samuel.
8:30. What are we talking?
Dude, I'm in bed by 8. I got to be up at 4. So
I saw your daughter was there. I have a little more ability to stay up late than she
He
does.
always says that stuff, and I'm looking at the time. I'm like, oh, it's like 8 o'clock.
Dude, I
Like,
go to
what?
bed between 8 and 9. I try to at least, or I'll be
I
a
couldn't
zombie
even
next day.
attempt to try to even do that.
Yeah, well, that's why you're dragging ass at 6 a.m. But what I'll say is, with Debo, the big question is like you want to be able to retain weapons for Jaden Daniels next season. With Debo, he's been a consistent theme this entire season. There's been some ups and some downs. We all can hint to the negative plays and the end arounds and everything. Are you bringing Debo back, or are you going down another route?
I like Debo a lot. He's not the ideal type of receiver opposite of Terry. I think you need somebody who has a little bit more speed and a little bit more threat downfield, as kind of that
That's
number
fair.
two receiver. Unfortunately, I wish we would have been able to see it together more this season to have a better feel for how Cliff could use those two together. But to me, as I look at this offense needs to get more vertical. I think they need to get downfield a little bit more. And, Terry's really your only downfield option right now. And you see how teams are able to defend him. And I think that as they go into next year, De'Ami Brown would have been a nice piece this year. I agree with the team for not going to 10 million with him. He's going to be a free agent next year. If you're able to get him for 3, 4 mil, 5 mil, whatever the number may look like, I wouldn't be surprised to see necessarily a reunion there. Not that he's going to be your every down number two receiver, but getting that more speed on the field, getting somebody who can work downfield more. I think, I think big picture, they need to look at, all right, we got Terry for 2 more seasons. I think, we need to figure out how to best optimize the receiver room so that you have kind of a couple different types of receivers that can do different things. And so Debo, if he ends up going to 20, 25 mil a year or so, which I imagine is going to be the range that he's in, that I want them to be aggressive. I don't know that Debo is the correct aggressive guy to go after. And as I've now poo-pooed both Debo and Ayuk being out there, I'd have to take a look at who the list of top receivers that are going to be available look like.
Off the
But
top of my head, I know it's really like Jacoby Myers, Rashid Shaheed, like those type of guys are going to be hitting the market.
After those comments, no, we're not doing too well on Twitter right now.
George Pickens,
And last question I have for you, Mitch. The uncomfortable question. Bobby Wagner. Bobby has been phenomenal in the run game. His leadership is priceless. You can't put a price tag on it. What do you think happens with Bobby after this season? And do you ultimately feel that this coaching staff, this front office, is comfortable with Jordan McGee wearing the green dot from here on out?
I think the conversation with Bobby starts with what does Bobby Wagner want?
Right.
If he's able to get to 100 tackles next year, first player in NFL history, 15 consecutive seasons with 100 tackles, I think there's 100% a role for him on this team. I don't if this coaching staff is willing to have an uncomfortable conversation, I think, hey, we really want you back and we know that you can be a good piece for us and help this team in a lot of different ways. I don't know that you're going to be on the field every down.
Right.
And I think that it goes back to what is Bobby Wagner's plan? What does Bobby Wagner want for himself? As I'm wearing this Capitals jersey, I was saying I think it's not so dissimilar to, what the Caps had to talk to Ovi about, this offseason. Ovi is an awesome player and had an incredible year last year, but you saw as the season wore on, he got a little tired, he got a little worn down, he started, looking a little bit of his age, and I think, you have to, embrace your vets, embrace your first ballot Hall of Fame type guys, but also be willing and able to have those conversations. Hey, we want you,
Right.
in this type of role. But if you're still looking to be an every down linebacker and the starting guy and green dot and on the field every down, then respectfully we'll let you explore your options and figure out how it works. But I think you want to see this defense get younger. You want to see it get faster. I do think Jordan McGee is your green dot guy next year. I was very high on him 2 years ago, and then he got hurt out of camp. I was high on him again this year. He didn't get enough. He didn't get nearly enough work early in the season, but I think ultimately next year they go to him in that role.
My man, Mitch, I can't thank you enough again for joining us, being able to talk with us and crap on everybody on Twitter. So I really appreciate your time and your thoughts, Mitch. But before we get out of here, it's like to plug your social media handle and your show, sir.
I'm not sure I want to plug it because I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of hate for
Yeah.
everything we talked about in this. But why would today be different on Twitter than any other day?
Right.
Exactly.
Mitch _ Tischler, Instagram and Twitter, and then Bellway Football, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts on Monumental Sports TV. Check us out.
My man, Mitch, have a good night, sir. I appreciate you. Enjoy your week.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks you, Mitch. All right, everybody. We just talked to the man, Mr. Mitch Tischler. Always appreciate his time.
Always a good conversation with the big guy.
Yeah, I know, and especially when he comes on here and craps on Hall. Like that's what I
See. Look, I was waiting for you to drop that in during the conversation. Look, would I like Brandon Ayuk on the team? Of course, yes. But like I've always said, it has to be at
I just gotta
the right
give you.
price.
I gotta give you crap, man.
I gotta tell it out there for the listeners because they might be like, "Oh yeah, he's a Brandon Ayuk guy."
They don't. They're all right.
You're planting that seed in people's head, and I don't like it.
But it's funny. To wrap this up, let's answer some fan questions that were submitted. This first one was by the Colonel. He said, please comment on cornerback Antonio Hamilton's play yesterday. He seemed to step up big in many situations and always seemed to be around the ball if he wasn't making the play himself. Why haven't we seen more of him? He's a playmaker.
Yeah, apparently he's been up and down on the roster throughout the year. To be honest, I didn't even know who he was until the game started, and I was like, oh, I'm looking at it, and I thought he was like a younger guy. I figured like, oh, just got drafted maybe. Yeah, I just figured like, oh, he got drafted recently, and a team moved on from him, and we ended up picking him up, and oh, maybe that's a little piece we can add. And then I looked, and I was like, oh, he's almost like a Josh Johnson type guy. He's played for like half the league, but yeah, so he's like an older guy, so I can see why no one really noticed or knew who he was prior to this game. But, I mean, he definitely balled out, did his thing, had a heck of a game Sunday. It seemed like every time they went his way, it seemed like they were trying to pick on him, and it seemed like every time they went his way, more times than not, it ended up in a good result for the defense. So, yeah, definitely a guy that we'll see. Again, there was no Malik Neighbors out there or nothing like that, but we'll see we'll see what he does with the reps against the AJ Browns, the Devontae Smiths, the CeeDee Lambs of the world. But I mean, if he comes out, holds his own, and ends the season on a good note, I wouldn't be surprised if they just brought him back in like a limited role type of capacity, like a role player type of guy next year, rotational, maybe even a practice squad type of guy. But I mean, he's an older guy that just pretty much had a good Sunday. We'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, we do have to put the defense of everybody on Twitter that wanted Darius Slayton last offseason before the Giants paid him a big chunk of change. A lot of people wanted Darius Slayton here. Mitch brought up how Mikey Sainristil had the pick, had a good job, but gave up the fourth down touchdown in the end zone. That throw to Darius Slayton was a good one. He almost had that touchdown. He dropped it. But you have to give respect to Antonio Hamilton for bullying the Giants wide receivers. I mean, that's essentially what he did. Now, why did it take so long for him to see the field? You can see it in his play. He's very physical, very handsy, and he bullies people. And it depends on which kind of reffing crew you get that are going to call that diligently or not. Are they going to be looking under that magnifying glass or going to let it play? And they ultimately let a lot of those play. I remember one guy, the Hogstye on Twitter, was like, how was he not flagged on that? And my point to him was, well, both guys were doing it. And so if it was only Antonio Hamilton, I'm sure it would have been DPI. But it was also, I think it was Slayton on that. No, actually, no. Was that Hodgins? I think that was the Hodgins one,
Um,
where it was
it was
the
either Hodgins or it was either Hodgins or it was Wandale Robinson, one of
it
those
was
two.
the third down where they were both grabbing on each other,
Pretty sure it was Hodgins.
and I think a lot of it has to do also, Colonel, that the flags weren't thrown. That some of them were overthrown. Jackson Dart was having an issue yesterday with his overthrows, and something that we kind of know a little bit about this season. Mariota in particular was struggling with overthrows this year. But for the most part, Antonio Hamilton very physical. You could see it, but it's like that's not something that you're going to get away with against other teams in the NFL. So you can see why they were kind of iffy with it and why they would start him to yesterday against that wide receiving core where you could probably get away with a little bit more. Not the speed, besides Wandale Robinson, the other guys not really speedsters in that sense where Antonio Hamilton could really get his hands on guys. I would imagine if he's going against a speedster on every rep, it's going to be a different story. So that's why you kind of saw him. But credit to him, he played his ass off. He bullied those wide receivers, and he did his job. I can't tell you enough.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't tell you enough how awesome it was to see Mikey read that football and to see him charge up on it. And that's exactly what Mikey does well. He just makes plays. And if we want to talk about how good that Cowboys defense was in Dallas, even though they got ran on a lot, passed on a lot, but they got turnovers. That's what Mikey is doing. Like that's essentially what what got Dan Quinn hired here. And so like we can't look at it and say, well, yeah, then he gave it up. Like that's what this defense does. In particular, Dan Quinn's defense is feast or famine. Sorry, all.
Nah, that's funny because I was thinking when people were talking about like, Mikey's food and this, that, and the third. Like, yes, he's getting beat a lot this year, but and I'm thinking back like, weren't people talking about they wanted Trayvon Diggs? He's basically a smaller Trayvon Diggs.
Right.
Trayvon Diggs is feast or famine. He's food, or he's going to jump the route and get you some turnovers. So, but to the point about Hamilton, I was going to say he's definitely handsy, physical, but we had a guy like that in Lattimore, and we saw he was kind of like the physical kind of bully ball type of cornerback, and he got called for penalties a lot. So we couldn't have two of those guys on the
I
field.
think a lot of those refs know about him. And
Well, yeah,
so
of
it
course,
was
of
like that's
course.
what I mean
It's
by
a
the magnifying
reputation thing, but
that's what I mean about the magnifying glass type thing where like they knew that that was a thing and he's somebody I just think that with Antonio Hamilton it is a little bit different in the way that he's physical. Marshawn was physical in the sense of trying to stay alive on the play, where Antonio Hamilton was still in control of the play. Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure, for
Like
sure. But like I said, it
Marshawn's
goes to
holding
the
Marshawn's
that
holding
goes to
to
the
stay in
receiver
it.
core. I feel like also.
Yeah, well, I think Marshawn was doing it to stay in the play, whereas Hamilton was playing physical already in the play. He didn't have to recover, and I think that's what Marshawn was kind of dealing with. And it doesn't help that Marshawn was doing it against some good wide receivers, and those wide receivers they're going to get the benefit of the doubt, the flag thrown, because they figure that they're going to win it anyway, and the flag is the only reason why it didn't happen. Because a
Yep.
lot of those flags don't get thrown until it's an incompletion. We've seen that a lot. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? The next question by the Colonel. Our final three games are against the Eagles twice and the Cowboys, both of whom have playoff aspirations, with Jaden Daniels sidelined for the rest of the season. Do you see us winning any of these games?
Uh, if I had to put money on it, I'd probably say no. But if you told me that I could probably pave you a path to a Week 18 win against the Philly because they're resting guys and they don't really need the game because they've already clinched the division and all that type of stuff. So they're just resting their starters to get ready for the playoffs. So I could see a situation like that where we just randomly win a game in Week 18 for whatever reason. I could paint you a path of might be a path with a lot of leaves on it, a couple of blades of grass going through it, but the Christmas Day game where which Cowboys team are you going to get? You're going to get the Cowboys team that demolished us back in Dallas in week whatever that was, where the defense was aggressive, even though we didn't have receivers on the field. Defense was aggressive. The Cowboys defense was aggressive. Our defense couldn't stop a nosebleed that day. or you're going to get the Dak Prescott and Dallas Cowboys of last night against the Minnesota Vikings that couldn't get out of their own way and got taken down by 9. So again, it's probably a very sketchy path on Christmas. The better, more lighted path would be Week 18 in Philly, where there's really nothing for Philly to play for. But again, there's been a lot of games this year where I thought, oh, they can beat this team, they should beat this team, and they just come out and look completely horrible. So if I had to bet against it, I'd probably say they lose all 3, but I could probably see them winning one just because.
9 times. Yeah, like obviously Minnesota showed you the blueprint and how to beat Dallas, and it was hard to do for them. Of course, the start of that game was absolutely horrendous with the J.J. McCarthy tip interception. It's like, what are we doing here? Like we got beat 31-0. They started out with a damn pick. Of course, they ended up winning the game. Of course, with that's what you need to do is what I've been trying to explain for a while now and getting after and confusing things. When you confuse that offensive line, you're able to do a little bit more. And to help you out just a little bit more, which is ultimately what this defense needs. Now, can this defense replicate what Minnesota did? Not 100% sure about that. Brian Flores has been doing this to a lot of quarterbacks this season. Their offense, Vikings, has not been doing all that well, so it's kind of been tipping the scales, so to speak, of production from either side of the football. So do I see us winning all 3 games? Yes, of course, but it's an uphill battle. Are the guys ready? These Jaden Daniels isn't playing. They kind of know what the signal is, the bat signal is in the sky, and are they going to be playing up to par against 2 of our divisional rivals? Of course, Hard Knocks is in town and watching, and so it's going to be cinema. We have to be able to enjoy this movie as much as we possibly can. I just hope that they don't go out of the season laying on their backs. I talked about this on the last episode. You can't go out of the season on your back. You got to at least punch somebody in the face, and they did that yesterday. But I would say these are 2 similar teams in production, and the Cowboys and Eagles are a different animal. But I think Washington, these divisional games, I've said it for a long, long, long time, ever since the Sports Junkies, it's really hard to gauge divisional games. Like, even though you think that this one team is better than the other, somehow these divisional games, they know each other. And as a coach now, I understand it. When you kind of know tendencies, it makes things a little bit easier to kind of nullify things. And I think that this could be one of those situations for Washington. I know it'd make everybody unhappy because they want the draft order, but I do see a path for it, but it's an uphill battle. Now, the next question we have is from the Discord, Chris Comerton. He asks, given the team ended an 8-game losing streak with a victory, what is the most critical positive takeaway for the Commanders moving forward?
That they can still run the ball with the best of them in the league. We saw that with Bill. I think they're still at one point they were number 2 in the league in the NFL in rushing. It was good to get back to them rushing the ball well. I know the Giants defense is not a good rushing team. We'll see what they do on
Absolutely
Saturday.
atrocious defensively, the Giants are.
I know, but we'll see what they do on Saturday. But it was good to see them get back to actually dominating in the run game. It was good to see Bill getting back to looking like Bill in the first couple weeks of the season. So if they can carry that over into Saturday, then again, that path that I was talking about where they had pretty much no shot on Saturday, all of a sudden that path kind of widens up and gets a little brighter. The lights start to shine a little bit brighter if you can run the ball against Philly. So, yeah, and we seen going back to last year as well. This team is, when they're at their best, they're running the ball at a very high clip. So if they can just get back to that throughout the rest of these last couple of games, then that'll be a positive note to end on.
Yeah, I'll say the one critical positive takeaway is that you can lean on the younger guys to make plays for you, to kind of help you win football games. And like I said this for a while, like everyone was getting on Jalen Lane. I saw a lot of people saying he wasn't an NFL wide receiver and all this other stuff. I get it. He had some drops. But when your defense isn't forcing punts, then Jalen's not going to show you what he can offer you as a rookie in sense of the electricity as a special teamer. And you saw that yesterday. If you get off the field defensively, he can make something happen in a big way. Same with Mikey Sainristil. If you're able to put him on the outside and allow him to work with his eyes, he could do some great things for you. And make no mistake, I know he gave up that fourth down touchdown. Wan'Dale Robinson has done that to a lot of people this season. He's had a sneaky good season for the Giants. He's been like their one consistent theme offensively all season long. And so I will give benefit to Mikey that he's still getting under the grasp or whatever, but
I'd probably agree with you if that wasn't happening for the other 14 weeks of this season.
well, he
But
was in the slot, douche.
I know. But I'm just saying, like,
I got you.
he's been getting beat.
And then
But he's also been getting turnovers, so.
yeah, and then Bill. Bill obviously showcasing yesterday. And this has been the issue with Washington this season that I've said for a while now, is that they do really well with running the ball against teams that aren't good at running the ball, at defending the run. So we need the consistency against good competition of running the football. And honestly, a lot of those rushing yards are inflated by the quarterback. Even the Giants yesterday, their rushing attack was inflated by Jackson Dart, who had 60 yards rushing. So overall, Washington rushed for 145. They rushed for 146. That's on par with us on average for what we do on a given day. So it was good that we were able to get that rushing total. The Giants got a lot as well, but I think a lot of that was inflated because of Jackson Dart. So, and that's been kind of the theme with Washington is that the quarterback has been depending too much of being able to gain those rushing yards, and we haven't been able to have that legitimate consistency all season long and being able to run the football. But yesterday was a good, critical, good thing looking forward, and you can't look away from the fact that the offensive line is doing a good job in pass protection. Given the pass rushers that the Giants do have, either a defensive tackle or an end, they did a fairly good job. A lot of those plays where you see Marcus Mariota on the Ben Sinnott throw, you see him sitting back in that pocket, stepping in, firing that thing over the middle to Ben Sinnott. Nobody was crashing in on him. On the Terry McLaurin touchdown, same thing. Nobody's crashing in on him. Clean pocket, fires that ball in there. Offensive line is one critical positive thing you could take away. So two things. You can depend on the young guys. And it seems like this coaching staff has kind of gone the other way on that into the beginning of this season. And maybe at the end of the season, they're kind of realizing maybe at this point now, we can rely on them a little bit more to make plays and have the game depend on them to make a play. And they could come through for you. And then the offensive line overall being a great piece built together that is growing. Next question is from our boy, Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi! This question is, what's the one glaring hole needed to be addressed first in the offseason?
I mean, the obvious answer everyone's been clamoring for the past almost 2 years now is the edge rusher that is going to be the tone setter.
Thought you were going to say wide receiver. Thought you were going to say it. I thought you were going to say it.
As much as I want another wide receiver, I'm not that blind to the fact that clearly this team needs a tone setter on defense.
My boy. Look, you're there, but I also understand that like Abdul Carter, right, was drafted top 5 by the Giants at edge rusher, and obviously they had 2 guys ahead of him, so his production hasn't met up, right, with what they kind of drafted him at.
But he's PFF grade. What do you mean?
Right. Well, he's too busy watching stuff during team meetings, but we're not going to get into that.
Come on, man. His PFF grade is high, so he had to have a dominating season, right?
But you know what I mean. And so ultimately, if you do get that edge guy in the first round, in the top 10, are you going to get that immediate production? I don't want to put that on them because I don't think that's a realistic case. But I do think the building block does need to be solidified in the sense that you have to at least put that piece in there to grow, similar to what they did with Josh Connerly. Whereas, yeah, maybe immediately in the first year you're not going to get an all-pro guy immediately, but maybe you could build up to that based on experience and what he's seen and doing. And I know Jay Gruden called in the radio today and said he's the worst right tackle in the league right now, and I still don't know why I see those tweets, but I do, and I wish I didn't. So ultimately, what I'll say is it's got to be edge, and I do think linebacker needs to be looked at. I would love to be able to see a little bit more of Kane Medrano and what he can do in the middle of the field. Ultimately, it's hard to be able to make that happen right now, given with what's in front of them. But I would like to see what we have in building blocks. I am disappointed that we didn't see more of Tyler Owens defensively. We saw a little bit of a stretch in the middle of the season when the injuries happened, where we got to see him a little bit. He got picked on at times, but would like to see him grow a little bit more as well in that sort of scenario, because obviously he's a special teamer and does a great job at it, but would like to see a little bit more on the 22. Now, the next question that we have was submitted. This is from Tim Towner because one of our good friends of this show, Jeff Miles, had a daughter. Congratulations, Jeff. Very happy for you, sir. His question, Tim Towner's, is what is one piece of advice you would share with the new father, Jeff Miles?
Uh, I would say definitely cherish these moments, cherish every moment. Um, yeah, and just yeah, like I said, cherish every moment because I mean, my daughter just turned a year, and it seems like time literally just flew by like that. So I can only imagine like as they get older and then go through school and all that stuff. Then you look back like, man, I was just holding this little girl in my arms like it felt like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I'll just say just cherish all these moments and make the most of them.
Yeah, life is not a Hallmark card as much as Hall wants to give that to you, Jeff.
Come on, man. I
Um,
got to go generic.
I'll be real with you. I would go as far to say you should read the book. It's Good to Be a Man, and just give you a heads up. That's a fantastic book. As a father, as a male, and leading the household, and what that ultimately means, and that it is okay to do, and it's something to read to kind of take and understand what your role is supposed to be. It'll help things ultimately. And the next thing I'll say is I know it's going to be hard. I have two kids myself, Jeff, and you're going to, with a newborn, you're going to be losing a lot of sleep. My wife and I know a lot about that. How did you hear me?
In the kitchen.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the book is right here. It's Good to Be a Man, Jeff. It's by Michael Foster and Dominic Non-Intendant. And so it's a phenomenal book. I would read that. But ultimately, what I'll say is to be real with you, Jeff. As a male and as a father, it's going to be hard. You're going to lose a lot of sleep. It sucks. But you got to put your big boy pants on. You got to lead your family. You got to be there for them, and you got to be able to tough it out and provide support and protect them as much as you possibly can. So I know things are going to get hard. They're going to get difficult. I'm here for you if you ever need to talk. But it's time to put your big boy pants on because your responsibilities have changed. And that's why we have a podcast here. We have a difficulty of all three of us being here because we have responsibilities that are bigger than this podcast, and we respect that. But that's what your number one job is right now: is to be a husband and a father, a protector for your family, and a provider. Next question that we have is from Deluxe. This might be a basic question that you've already covered, but how did each of you feel after the win?
Um, I mean, I felt good. I don't like to see my team go out there every single week and get blown out or play really good competitive football and then not close the game out at the end or just play a sloppy, horrible game like they did in Madrid and still not close the game out in the end. I like to see my team win. I know there's the whole like, oh, the lose for the draft capital and the draft pick, and we can get a trade back scenario. And I said this on Twitter. Like, do y'all like realize the teams that are in front of us? The Jets, the Browns, and the Raiders are all teams that are already in front of us. They're not going to finish behind us more than likely. Those are all probably three quarterback needy teams. There's probably only three quarterbacks that are going to be going in this first round at this point in time. So there probably wasn't going to be any room for a trade back scenario. So I just feel like um, I don't even remember the original question
Now
now.
you get it. How did you feel after the win? It's very simple.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I felt good, and yeah, I don't like to see my team lose all the time. I want to see them get a win. Obviously, you look at the players and the coaches. It felt good. Like Dan Quinn said, enjoy how it feels to be in a winning locker room. It felt a lot of that last year. It's been literally 2 months since they felt that on this past Sunday. So um, yeah, winning breeds a winning culture. Losing does not breed a winning culture. I like to win.
I totally agree with you. How did I feel after the win? I kind of felt like Reed when he got back from Thailand. We still don't know why he went to Thailand, but he was very happy when he got back. I was ecstatic, finally being able to punch somebody in the face. And honestly, with the turnovers that Washington had, like with Mariota, like, it just seemed like they wanted to give the game away. Even though they very much were in control of that thing, they wanted to give it away, which has kind of been the epitome of the entire season altogether. But I was very happy to finally, because like we swept the Giants, And anytime you can make a New Yorker angry, it's fantastic. It's a good time. I'm tired of hearing about Big Blue because now they have a Big Blue bruise on their face from us punching them in the face. So I was happy. To be perfectly honest with you, I know there's people out there that want a higher draft pick and everything like that, but those are typically the people that are not winners in life sense. You try to win as much as you possibly can. Don't laugh at that, Hall. But I'm just being honest. Like they don't understand what it's like to be on a football team. You know what I mean? Like I know the NFL is different because of draft order and everything like that. But I think Disco on Twitter had a great point in saying that if your GM is good, it shouldn't matter what position you're at in the draft order. They should be able to build and have a sustainable piece drafted in the first round. Everybody has those picks. Justin Jefferson wasn't a selection until the 20s, right? Like this is the sort of thing where you identify the talent, you harp on the talent, you find out more and how you can utilize it, and then you bring them in here and do something with them. Now the next question from Deluxe: 2-1 in the division, 3 games to go. Thoughts on 4 divisional games to end the season? Should 4 in a row to end the season happen in the NFL? Yes, especially if Hard Knocks are in town.
Yeah, I think they just started recently doing this, and they did it last year with the AFC North, and I think they had like 6 games to close out the AFC North, like 6 divisional games. The last 6 weeks of the season, Hard Knocks was doing the AFC North last year, so I think that's going to be a new kind of NFL type of trend. It makes better cinema for the end season, Hard Knocks as well, especially if it's like I can see them doing the NFC North next year because that's going to be a division that's going to be probably really tough. 3, maybe 4 teams if the Vikings get back on track that are all going to be kind of fighting for the division and a playoff spot or two. So I could definitely see the NFL. And again, it's entertainment business at the end of the day, and
Mm-hmm.
this is really entertaining seeing your division foes down the stretch. And if your team lives up to the hype that they're supposed to in the beginning of the season and throughout, then these games down the stretch are 10 times even better because it means so much even more. So I love it, and I hope they continue this trend.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It should happen more. Divisional games are fantastic coming down to the wire, especially when you're trying to win a division. You don't know how things are going to shape out. So you want to make sure that those games are meaningful at the end of the season. And I think that a lot of the players in their presser to the press was basically saying, like, we want to, like, if I'm going down, I'm taking you down with me. I think that's what Von Miller was essentially saying. And dude, I'm all for it. Please do that. Please make it as hard as frickin' possible for them. Do not go out on your back and come on into these games ready for a damn fist fight and be willing to be able to take a punch and be able to give 2 more. And that's essentially how you should end this season going into next year with a hard ass mentality that even though we might be on the losing end of this overall season, we're gonna leave with our marks too. We're gonna get a couple licks in. You know what I mean? We're not jumping anybody, but it's a one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be unfair, but a one-on-one type of situation. I can't stand that stuff. All right, everybody. Matt's going to wrap us up for this episode. It is my anniversary today. Thank goodness for my wife. And
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw that. Have to tell Katie I said happy anniversary and happy anniversary to
th-
y'all.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. I got my boss in trouble today, so I told him because like my boss, his wife also works there, and I told her it was my anniversary and we're celebrating on Saturday, and she asked me, "Oh, did you schedule it? What you're doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I called in the reservation, to a place that we like to go to. It's like a Christmas theme. We love it." And she's like, "Oh, you did it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I look over and my boss is over there, and he's like, "Yeah, but if I do it, she says not to spend the money." And I was like in the middle of a crossfire. I was like, "What is happening right now? What did I just erupt here?" I was so very excited. I'd say this was the last episode. I've been on a Gettysburg obsession for like a month or so, and so we're going to Gettysburg next month to walk around. And like I tried explaining to her the battle maps, and I was like, "This is where I want to walk. Are you sure you're okay with that?" She's like, "I can walk that far." I was like, "Yeah, but they're hills." Like, "Yeah, I'll be fine, Kyle, as long as I'm with you." I was like, "Okay, all right, we say that now, you know." But I'm very excited
And
about doing
30
it.
minutes in, it's like, how much further? Are we almost
Right,
there?
like it's just land. We're not doing anything. Can we go eat now? All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up to this episode. Thank you to everyone who tuned in on Twitter. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in on YouTube. Thank you to Tim Towner. Thank you to Deluxe. Thank you to Chris Comerton. To the Colonel, Mitch Tischler. We love you guys. We appreciate all you. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. We'll see you again on Friday to kind of dive into this Eagles matchup on Saturday. So we hope to see you then. Tune back in. We appreciate you guys. Please like and subscribe, of course, whatever the hell thing to do. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you then. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support.